my name is Tom Stapleton, Executive Director for the Wakefield Community Access Television Station. And today we have an interesting person on board with us. His name is John Paul, and John is the AAA's car doctor. How did you get involved in that, John?
Well, before I came to work at AAA, and I was at AAA for a long time, I've been there for 30 years, but before I came to work at AAA, I fixed cars. I worked as a mechanic in a couple of different repair shops. And one day somebody actually gave me a little plaque because I fixed their car, and they said, "You're the car doctor." And
it's stuck.
And it sort of stuck. And when I came to work at AAA, I had a couple of different positions that I held there. But I started to write in our publication, and we wanted to know what to call the column, and we were a little kind of went back and forth. And I said, "Why don't we just call it the car doctor column? I have a plaque that says car doctor, so why don't we go with that?" And they thought it was a good idea. So for about the past probably 26 or 7 years at AAA, there's been the AAA car doctor, and that's been me. So.
And you have a radio show that
Yeah, I do. I do a radio show for the past 9 years on WROL Radio. It's AM 950. It broadcasts our studios in Quincy, and we have a good signal all up and down the East Coast of Massachusetts at least. And that's on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock right now. It runs from 9 to 10. It's going to go from 8:30 to 10 in a couple of weeks. But I answer people's car questions. People call in. I try to interview different people during the week and just have fun with it. It's just it's a way where I get to meet interesting people on the radio, and I've had some really interesting experiences with people. Even though it's a smaller radio program, I had a designer on from one of the car companies a couple weeks ago, and a young guy, but he's designed all the new Chrysler products recently. And I've had the president of Ram Trucks on not too long ago. So had an opportunity to talk to people that I wouldn't normally get to talk to in my daily life. So the radio show's been pretty interesting, and I've sort of established a radio family, people that listen to me, and sometimes I get a little worried. I don't hear from them for a month or so. They don't call in with a question. I'm a little worried about them at that point. So you sort of build up a kind of personal relationship with the audience.
Yeah, it does. And now that you mention it, I have listened to you before, and I'm a car guy myself. I love, and especially the older cars, and some of the questions that you've been asked, you can tell they're from a newer generation, because the one that I'm from is not around anymore. Which brings me to one question. The technology today in cars, it's changed dramatically over the past 30 years and so on like that. What are some of the experiences you had, or some of the questions that people have asked you with the new technology before I get into the old stuff?
Technology, yeah, it really is. I mean, the technology in cars today is amazing. Not just the idea that there's hybrids and plug-in hybrids that you can recharge a battery off your house current of your house. That technology is pretty amazing. But some of the safety technology that's in cars today, backup cameras, something called cross-traffic alert, which means that if you're backing out of a parking space, in essence, the sensors see down both sides of the parking lot. So if somebody's coming 5 or 6 cars away, your car warns you about that. So you don't have to you don't necessarily visually see them, but your car does. Cruise control systems that...
Oh, that's amazing now, the new one. Tell me a little about that. I just found out about that.
Yeah, the cruise control systems today use laser or LiDAR, and what they do is they keep a safe distance between you and the car in front of you. And most cruise control that most people are used to, you set it at 60 miles an hour, and it does 60 miles an hour. If you're coasting down a hill, it might go a little faster than 60 because it doesn't apply the brakes. These new cruise control systems will maintain that speed. Somebody pulls in front of you, it will actually slow the car down. And I was driving a Hyundai Sonata, so kind of a middle-of-the-road car like a Toyota Camry, and it had intelligent cruise control. And I set the cruise control about as fast as I could get it to go. I think it topped out at 130 miles an hour.
You can set it there?
You can. You can. But I was on a road that you could only go about 50. But I had it set at 130 miles an hour. So I was going 45 or 50 miles an hour, and I was following the car in front of me, and it would speed up, I'd speed up, it'd slow down, I'd slow down. But I never really exceeded the speed limit because everybody else was doing the same speed limit. Well, I took a turn to pull off the highway onto a residential road, still had the cruise control set at 100 and something miles an hour. Car in front of me stops at a light. the car I'm in stops, and it actually came to a complete stop, and as long as we didn't stop for too long, it would start on its own. So we stopped, the car in front of me went, I would go. We did that through 3 or 4 sets of lights, and then the car in front of me ran the red light, which sounds to be a problem, and it really was, because I got so used to the car sort of driving itself. When the car in front of me went through the red light, my car wanted to go through the red light because I wasn't stepping on the gas or the brake. So I had to remember to step on the brake at that point. So we're not that far away from cars that are going to drive themselves. I mean, we talk about, you know, there's been some reports lately about the Google car, and it's gotten 11 car crashes, but it seems to be all the car crashes, people run into it. But we're not, the car manufacturers are starting to build this sort of self-driving technology where you can, as you start to get out of a lane, it'll actually correct it and pull you back into the lane again. So yeah, it applies one of the brakes, for instance. So you'll drift out of the lane, it'll apply either front right or front, or right rear or right front brake, and it will actually make the car sort of drift back into the lane. And the cars are smart enough that if you're letting it drift by itself, all of a sudden a message comes up on the dash that says, put hands on steering wheel. Really? Because it knows that you're letting it kind of play with itself. So it's sort of, the technology it's really amazing what's in there for cars. And to think about the idea that they're in essence giving horsepower away. You look at the horsepower cars are producing, you know, back in the 60s and 70s, maybe a lot of horsepower might have been 300 horsepower. Now V6 engines are making 300 horsepower. We're seeing 400, 500 horsepower. There's a kind of a halo car from Chrysler right now, the Dodge Challenger, but you can get the Hellcat version. It's 707 horsepower. So it's even that 700 horsepower engine is in what would be in the 70s considered a small V8. So it's amazing that the technology lets them do that, and it lets them make these high horsepower engines very, very clean and efficient. So you can take, you know, take the new Ford Mustang, for instance, great looking car, produces 400 horsepower in the V8 model, I think, maybe even a little bit more than that. You could probably let 100 of those sit there and idle, and it would put out less air pollution than one 1967 Mustang did.
Well, speak of the old cars, if you remember now, if you're driving along the street and an old car comes in front of you or passes you, like an old car, with no emissions and everything, you can tell by the smell. Oh yeah, my
without
God,
a doubt.
That's what we used to smell back.
No,
it's horrible.
And even the trucks today, diesel trucks are so much cleaner and so much more efficient than they are, and that's why we're seeing diesel engines in smaller trucks and cars now, because they can make them clean and efficient. And cars today, you know, the sort of hot rod cars of the 70s and 60s, well, they accelerated pretty good, but they didn't stop very well, and they didn't handle very well. This 700 horsepower Dodge Challenger has brakes that are gigantic on it, and the car actually stops well. It has big aggressive tires on it, so it actually handles really well. And it's really what makes cars today, as much as I love old cars, some of these modern cars are really, really interesting cars.
They really are. And my son had a car a while back. It was an Audi, and it had all of the gadgets that you can have. And the one thing that really impressed me was it had night vision.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So if you're driving around a country road and then there's a deer in front of you or something like that, it would recognize the heat from the deer somehow. And this little screen in your dash would point up, and you could take a picture of the deer. And I said, that is truly amazing. But I said, well, what are all these heat devices that are on these poles every time you go by? And they're transformers.
They're transformers,
So it would actually pick up the heat from all the transformers.
No, there's two ways to have night vision. One is to amplify light. So if you were in a completely dark area, that night vision camera wouldn't show much. But as soon as there's a little bit of light, it would show a lot. The other one is with the infrared systems like that was in that car. Those are pretty interesting systems because, like you notice, what's going on with the telephone poles. And the other thing is, if you're driving along a residential road where cars are parked, you can tell which car was recently parked because it shows the heat from the engine. And even to the point where I saw a truck come off a on-ramp, and you could see one tire was hotter than the other
Yeah.
because the tire, that side of the truck was probably a little bit out of alignment, which makes the tire get warmer to the touch than the other one. The systems are amazingly sophisticated, something that we only saw in military applications 30 years ago, and they're putting them in cars. And you said, could you see a deer? I was on a pretty dark little road one day, and I see this little red object in the road, or white object, I guess, and I'm like, what's that? And I look, and it's not moving much. I'm like, is that really something? Because I couldn't see it with my eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it was a skunk going across the road.
Oh, my
and the heat signal, and it generated enough heat where the night vision camera could see it.
It is. It's truly amazing, the equipment that we have out there now. So let me ask you a couple of questions
Sure.
that you've taken on your radio
Yeah.
program, and they're interesting things. The first one is, it says, my car has been taken over by mice, and what can I do?
We hear that one a fair amount,
Really?
especially in the spring and the fall, when I guess
Yeah.
mice tend to nest a little bit more. And the first thing you can do is try to figure out why they're there. Sometimes they're in a garage, sometimes it's in a barn, sometimes it's outside. And a lot of times we see it when the person who owns the car might have bird feeders. So so the bird seed ends up attracting the mice to start off with, and the mice look for a home that's warm, and they'll build up a nest under the hood, or sometimes even in the car. And so you have to eliminate any source, and it can be water too. So if you have pet food, bird food, anything that attracts the mice. Then if you're trying to get rid of them, well, you can get traps and things. But I've had pretty good luck. You go to a hardware store and you can get oil of spearmint, and it looks like a tea bag.
Yeah.
And it smells like spearmint. And you kind of place that around the car a little bit, or under the hood, and inside the car. And the mice don't like the smell of spearmint, apparently. So people have written to me and said they've had great luck with Bounty dryer sheets.
Oh.
So take the dryer sheet, and if it's under the car or under the hood, put those out. There's some chemicals that you can buy that simulate predators, so like things that would eat a mouse or a squirrel or something like that. So it's not pretty sounding, but it's like dried coyote urine or something. And it's a powder, and you sprinkle it around the vehicle, and that's enough that the mice and squirrels think that, oh, I could get eaten if I'm here. So so you can buy that, or you can buy a cat. You know, just,
You have a cat with you wherever you go.
Exactly. So you could try that.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. But we do run into that, and as much as nobody wants to have a mouse in their car while they're driving, mice and squirrels can cause some real serious damage to cars, chewing through wires. I talked to somebody not that long ago that had several $1,000s worth of damage done to the car by, they think it could have been mice, it could have been rats, they're not sure, but there was definitely a sort of a mouse house under the hood of the car, and it ate through the wiring harness that actually worked the transmission. So they had to replace that whole wiring harness, and pretty expensive repairs. So you have to think of what can happen. Now, you know, some of it you can claim through your insurance, but it's still an expensive repair. And today's cars, one of the reasons we see more mice in cars today too is years ago we used to coat all the vinyls and the wires and everything in the car, and they were all made from petroleum byproducts. You know, vinyl is made from petroleum. Now, because we want to be more environmentally sensitive, there's soy-based products. So the foam in the seat is made out of soy. Well, soy must taste good to mice. They go looking for the soy, and that's part of the problem. So we're seeing quite a bit of that. And you don't have to, you know, some people say, well, I only left my car parked for a couple of days. That's all it takes to build a mouse house and cause a problem.
Make a home.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, let me see. The next one I have is, my car smells bad when I turn the air conditioner on, and they want to know why.
And it's this time of year we see it a lot too. That first warm day you turn the air conditioner on, you're like, oh my goodness, what is that? Inside the air conditioner system, mold and mildew can build up. And you think of where mildew and mold builds up, dark, wet areas. And your air conditioner, one of the things it does besides cools the air is it takes the humidity out of the air. So when you take the humidity out of the air, it has to go somewhere. And that's when sometimes you park your car and you see a clear puddle of water come out from under it. Well, if that drain isn't working correctly, that water builds up inside the system, and it actually coats the inside of the air conditioner ducts, and it'll get moldy and mildewy, and that will cause part of the problem. So you want to make sure that the vent is good and clear so the water drains out. And sometimes what happens if the mildew is already built up in there, sometimes you can get lucky and you just get some Lysol or something like it and spray all of the ducts and really spray it in there and turn the fan on and let it spray around inside there, and that will help kill some of the mildew and mold. In worst cases, sometimes they actually have to disassemble the entire air conditioner system, and I've seen some, they actually have to take a brush and soap and water and wash it all out, and then they can coat some of the inside of it with an antimicrobial. And then the other thing they do, and this is where computer technology allows them to do some things, when you shut off your car, it can let the fan inside the car run for a few minutes after you get out of the car, and that dries out the inside of the system to keep the moisture from building up. But people that have mold and mildew allergies, they can get in their cars and have some real problems. The other thing, something everybody can do is, when you're in your car, there's usually a setting for fresh air and recirculated air.
Okay.
When it's on the recirculated side, you're just recirculating that moist air over and over again. Keep it on the fresh air setting. That way you'll take more moisture out of the car.
Okay, so that's what that's all about.
Yeah.
So you can recirculate the air in your car.
In your car, which will warm up the car quicker on a cold day.
And make
it may even chill the car a little bit quicker, but you're using the same air more or less over and over again, and it can get pretty humid inside the car. That's why when you put it on the defroster setting, for instance, it immediately, even if it's set on recirculate, it'll go back to the fresh air setting, because that's what takes the steam off the inside of the windows.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Who would know? All right, here's a question here. This is called, on your program, a disgusting question of the week.
Yes.
My wife spilled raw milk. Notice he said his wife.
Yep,
okay.
he did.
He's blaming his wife.
He's blaming his wife, yep.
My wife spilled raw milk in our new minivan. What do you do for that?
Well, this got really bad.
Yeah.
They went to a farm stand. I guess they got unpasteurized milk, and it came in a milk container.
Yeah.
And it fell over in the car, and it spilled and soaked into the carpets. And then they went away for the weekend and left the car parked in the sun. So it didn't just get sour.
Yeah.
It actually had maggots and stuff inside of it.
How nice.
And, it was disgusting. And he showed me a picture of it. And he said, and I said, well, they're going to have to pull the complete interior of the car out, completely wash the car out. You'll never get, they might even have to take the headliner, the roof part off, because the smell is so into there. And they got all of it cleaned. They replaced most of the interior. And the real question was, my wife still won't drive the car. What do I do? And I said, at this point, I don't know that my wife would drive the car either, because they looked at it and it looked like, it looked as disgusting as it could be. And he said, there's nothing in it anymore. It's clean. Yeah. And I said, I think two things are going to happen. Either this is going to become your new car, or maybe trade it in and buy another one. And I think they finally opted to trade it in. His wife just wouldn't ever drive the car again, because it was, she said it's like going into a scary movie. She, I just can't be inside that car. So, yeah. And the smell, and I guess the smell was bad, but the idea that all these little creepy crawly things inside of it too. So,
That reminds me of the old days when people used to smoke a lot.
Oh yeah.
And they'd smoke in their car, and the minute you get in the car, you could, it's in the headline. In a lot of back then, a lot of the seats were cloth.
Yep. Yep.
So it's all in there. And you could tell you could tell a smoker in the car, because when they go by you, the inside of the windows had this like glaze on it.
Yeah.
It's all the nicotine.
Oh, nicotine. Yeah. No.
Oh my God.
And it's people don't realize how they depreciate a car sometimes with smoking. Or one of my coworkers was looking for a Honda Pilot, and at the time the used ones he was looking at, I think, were probably $20,000, and he found one for $15,000 at a dealership. It had relatively low miles on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he went and looked at it and he said, geez, it looks really good. And he came back the next day when they were open, and he said he opened up the door and it smelled like a kennel inside the car. And he talked to the people and they said, yeah, that's why it's $5,000 less than anything else. He said, because we can't get rid of the smell.
Get rid of the smell.
Yeah. And he said, if you have a dog, I guess maybe you'd just be used to it. But we're hoping. And as much as it was a great value because it was in good condition, he said the smell was just intolerable. So people smoke in cars, people that have pets in cars, people that spill things in cars, they really need to remember that they're actually taking the value out of the car when it's time to trade it in.
That's a good point, too. Oh, here's one here. What is AAA approved auto repair, and why should I go to an AAR shop? What is AAR?
AAR is approved auto repair. AAA has garages all around the country that are certified by AAA. And what that means is we go in and we talk to the owner of the garage. We pull about 100 service records, so we write to those customers and say, how was the service? And a couple of key questions we ask is, was the work done on time? Was it done at the price that was quoted? And a real important one is, would you refer a friend to this garage? And once we get a favorable response, and it's got to be over 90% favorable response, then we look and make sure that their technicians are ASE certified by the Automotive Service Excellence Group, National Institute of Automotive Service Excellence. Then we want to make sure they carry the proper amount of insurance, just in case your car gets damaged while it's there. We want to make sure they have the right insurance. And then we also, once they become part of the program, any estimate has to be either within the state maximum. So in Massachusetts, we have very strong consumer laws. So if you go into a repair shop and say, how much is it going to cost to do a particular repair in my car, the estimate and the final repair has to be within $10 of each other. With shops outside of Massachusetts, it might be within 10%. But important too is that the repairs have to be warranted for at least 1 year and 12,000 miles. So if you go in and have a starter put in, that starter's got to work for at least 1 year or 12,000 miles. And now we're even looking to move that warranty up to 2 years and 24,000 miles. So it's a way, especially if you're someone who's new to town. They just moved to Wakefield. They don't know where to go. They can go on the AAA website, look up approved auto repair garages in the area. They can find a couple, go in, and rather than have to rely on neighbors, friends, or just have a bad experience somewhere, they know that someone has looked at that garage. And if there is a problem, if there is something that came up, they can come to AAA, ask, I had a bad experience. We'll send an investigator out who goes out. And the garage has agreed as part of the program that if there is an issue, any decision that AAA makes, they have to abide by. So if we go out and we say, yeah, it looks like maybe you really did misdiagnose this problem. We think you need to refund that original repair. The garage has to say yes. We don't do it very often because we have really high satisfaction rates, up over 95% with our approved auto repair garages. But still, it can happen sometimes, and it's just a good way to find a good, solid, reputable garage.
That is a great convenience, and from what you just said, and it seems like a no-brainer to me. But another convenient thing that AAA has done is they have opened up satellite areas for renewing licenses.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I think that's a great convenience because everybody's had an experience with the registry. Sorry, guys, it's just the way it is. But that's a fantastic convenience.
Yeah, it's for AAA members, and we do license renewals, we do registration renewals, and we don't do them in every office. So you have to you have to look around. But we're trying to work with the new registrar right now to see if we can put that service in every office. But it's a great way to get your license renewed without the line. Down where I live on the South Shore, I went into our Rockland office. They just started doing license renewals. My license technically expires today.
Okay.
But I was in there in March, and there was no line, and I said, oh, but while I'm here, can I get my license renewed? And they're like, oh, sure. And you can do your license up to a year early.
Wow.
Yeah. So most people don't know that, but you can do your license up to a year early. It doesn't change the expiration date. It just
Yeah.
You just makes it more convenient. So my license is due to expire in 2020. It's still going to expire in 2020, even though I renewed it 3 or 4 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
And it's just a nice way to do it. I
Really
walked in, I walked
convenient,
out. There's no additional fees involved. You just pay the regular amount, and again, no line.
Yeah.
You know, and while I was there, I got a map. You know, so yeah.
Well, I mean, AAA's been around for a while, so.
1902.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have it myself. I really enjoy it, but I can't go into too much of a commercial line, but
That's okay.
It's a great product. Back to some questions here. Here's a question. If I have a car that takes regular gas, can I use premium fuel? And if I have a car that takes premium fuel, can you use regular fuel?
Yeah, if you have a car that takes regular and you decide you want to treat it to treat it nicer and you decide to put premium in most cases, all you're doing is just wasting money. That extra 20 cents a gallon or 30 cents a gallon you're paying isn't going to do anything for you. You're not going to, it's not going to make the car run better. Okay. It's not going to get better gas mileage. If you have a car that says premium fuel required, it's a good idea to put premium fuel in it. Okay. What happens is the car's technology in the car will adjust the engine timing and the fuel delivery so you won't do engine damage. But what happens is it reduces power and performance and fuel economy. So you have to step on the gas a little bit harder to get better fuel economy, to get more power, so in turn you lose fuel economy. So when people, one of our bosses at work has a Lexus. And he said, do I have to use premium? It's so much more expensive. I'm like, first off, you bought a Lexus, so don't, you know. And I said, here's what I want you to do. Over the next month, fill up with regular, record your mileage, and then fill up with premium for a month and record your mileage. And then at the end, see where it became more cost effective. And he said, well, it's going to be cheaper when I fill up. I said, yeah, but you might find at the end of a month, instead of getting 24 miles to the gallon, you're only getting 21 miles per gallon, and that 3 miles per gallon difference didn't make up for the money the less money you spent at the pump when you went to fill up. And sure enough, that's how it worked. Then there are cars that say premium fuel recommended. That means that you don't really have to use it, but if you want to enjoy the performance of the car, you really should. And then there are some that are very critical about using premium fuel. Sports cars, Porsches and things like that, where you really have to, where it says if you don't use it, you could do damage, because those are cars that are typically designed to be driven hard. But but basically what it comes down to, if the owner's manual says put premium fuel in, put premium fuel in. If the owner's manual said put 87 in, put the 87 in.
Well, okay, that's really good to know, and that's interesting because my car takes regular fuel, and like you said, when the gas was going really low, I said, oh, let me put some high test in there, and I said, that'll help it. I said, you know, it's just wasting the money.
I remember years ago, I did an interview with a TV station in Boston, and we were doing it at the gas pump, and this woman pulled up, and she put premium in, and she drove a Jeep. And we walked over to her and said, how come you put premium? And she said, my grandfather always told me to put premium in every car. And I said, okay, do you notice? She said, I don't know, he just told me to do it, so I always do it. And I said, well, that's kind of why that happens. And I said, you don't need it. You really don't need it. You just, if your car requires 87, use 87.
All right, there you go. Well, we've got a little time left here, and what I'd like to do is just to say that, kind of in closing, it was really great contacting you. Eleanor Baker is the person that I got in touch with, and then she'd mentioned that you were available to do this. So what I'd like to do is maybe in another month or two or something, maybe come back and we can go over a few more things, because there's so much more I'd like to talk to you about.
No, this is great. I'd love to.
Maybe make it a monthly show or something. That would be great.
Whatever you want to do.
All right. That's great. All right, John. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate it. And
well, thank you.
Take care.
All right.